Kamigawa Neon Dynasty has just experienced another leak, and this one is a dream come true for part of the player base. If you're someone who's felt like White has got the short end of the stick recently in Magic the Gathering, well, good news. The White cards we're going to talk about today are pretty powerful.
Magic.
I am a wizard!
History.
I'm an old wizard!
The Magic Historian.
My bones hurt. Greetings! Owners of fine luxury cardboard rectangles, my friends, I hope the day finds you well because we have another Kamigawa Neon Dynasty leak to talk about. And this one features some very interesting white cards and a particular area of Kamigawa that featured prominently in the previous Kamigawa storyline. So, with no further ado, let me get the first spoiler up on the screen for you, my friends. I present to you Eiganjo, Seat of the Empire, a white legendary land that taps to add 1 white mana and also has the ability Channel, pay 1 white and 2, discard Eiganjo, Seat of the Empire. It deals 4 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each legendary creature you control. So this is a very interesting card to me. On the surface, it is a legendary land, but really the main ability of this legendary land is used when it's sitting in your hand. But at the same time, it is, in essence, a super upgraded Plains. Yes, it doesn't count as a Plains, but it does come into play untapped. It taps for a white mana straight out, and it handles its own downside, which is something I absolutely love about this concept. Channel is an ability that already existed in Kamigawa, but the truth is, most channel cards were really terrible. Here, Wizards has found a way to take Channel and make it far more appealing, right? If you get Eiganjo in your starting hand, boom, you put it out, you've got a white mana source. Also, it counts as a legendary permanent, so you can use it in whatever number of different ways that care about you having legendary permanents. But as you draw additional copies of this card, you are not hosed by the legendary rule, right? Because the legendary rule says you can only have 1 copy of these cards out. So it solves that problem by going, well, actually, you can pitch Eiganjo and pay 3 mana and do 4 damage to an attacker or a blocker. And that is a really solid ability in my opinion. Yes, it is an ability you would normally see on like a common, like a draft style common, do 4 damage to an attacker or blocker. But this is stacked onto a land with no downside unless you consider being non-basic and legendary a downside, because some cards care about that. But as far as I'm concerned, that's not really a downside in this discussion. So the card has no downside. You can't get hosed by the legendary rule. It doesn't slow you down. Additional copies of it actually benefit you, right? And the fact of the matter is, if you have legendary creatures out, it makes it even cheaper to use this ability. So you can use this to force through your army pretty quickly, I would imagine, depending on the setup that you have, right? If you're playing a white weenie kind of rush, this can get rid of big creatures that are a problem for you. If all your creatures are 1/1s or 2/2s, and somebody slaps down a 4/4 or a 5/5, you can be in a world of trouble if you can't kind of surpass what they have set up. All of a sudden, this can knock those things out of the way. So I really don't know whether I should consider this to be land that also counts as removal, or if I should count this as removal that also counts as land, right? Because most of the time, you're going to have one of these in play, and the other 3 are going to be fired off into your graveyard. So this to me is a really interesting card. I don't know exactly how much people like legendary lands that don't have additional abilities when they're in play, right? Because if you ignore the channel part, it really does just tap for 1 white mana. But to me, this is a solid basic design for legendary lands in Kamigawa. And also, this is a really big story piece in the world of Kamigawa as well, right? You can see this is Eiganjo, Seat of the Empire, but I'm going to put up on the screen for you as well Eiganjo Castle, which is the precursor location to this. So Eiganjo Castle was originally a legendary land that tapped to add 1 white mana to your mana pool, comes into play untapped, pay 1 white and tap it, prevent the next 2 damage that will be dealt to target legendary creature this turn. And the flavor text says, Since the war began, the castle's walls mark the only place on Kamigawa where no kami has ever set foot. Now, that actually did not last. At the time we were looking at the story then, yes, that did happen. But Okagachi, the gigantic Kamigawa, like that is, the kami god that lords over all of the spirit world, essentially demolished Eganjo Castle. Lord Konda and that which was taken were used together essentially to keep those lands safe for a considerable amount of time with the help of Yosai. But ultimately, Eganjo Castle got leveled. But on the same lands, they rebuilt Eganjo as this new seat of the empire. And if you take a look at the artwork, you can see that there are some similarities roughly kind of in the shape and coloring. Admittedly, we are looking at a photograph of the card, so we don't have the highest resolution artwork, but it's like a modernized version of Eganjo Castle. So to me, this is a really cool kind of story piece. I do like this is 1,200 years apart. Understand that, right? Eganjo Castle is from 1,200 years ago, and Eganjo Seat of the Empire is from the current era in Magic the Gathering. So, I don't know, man. I just thought that was really cool. And actually, the next card we're going to talk about also has to do with Eganjo, and this is Eganjo Uprising. 1 white, 1 red, and X for a sorcery that admittedly the first time I looked at it, I went, this doesn't seem that good. So it says, create X 2/2 white samurai creature tokens with vigilance. They gain menace and haste until end of turn. And it also says each opponent creates X -1 2/2 white samurai creature tokens with vigilance. So honestly, when I first read this card, my brain went, wait a minute. I make X guys, and all my opponents make X -1 guys. In a 2-player game, this is going to be bad enough. If I make 10 guys, you get 9 guys? How does this help me? And if I'm playing a big old commander game, wait a minute, I get 10 guys, you 3 each get 9 guys, so you get 27 guys in total? I get 10? The math just seems terrible, right? When you look at it, you go, well, all this does is get me ahead 1 creature. How could this be any good, right? Now, I can't say for sure whether this is going to make it into the realm of standard finishers. But this is most assuredly going to be, at the very least, a draft finisher. Because when you actually go back and read over it again, you realize, yes, they are getting 1 less token than you, but they're also getting 2 less abilities than you. All of the tokens have vigilance, right? But the tokens that you put into play, the turn they come into play, they also have menace and haste, which means all the tokens can swing right away. Plus, it means that your opponent has to block 2 tokens of theirs to block 1 of your tokens, right? So you can essentially swing through with a number of 2/2s, but it really does feel like the kind of card where you have to be in the lead in a game. Like, it's something to help you cement a victory, maybe in standard. In limited, it's just going to run away with games. But in standard, it's one of those things where if you don't do things properly, like if you don't win the turn you played this, and you don't have some way of handling the gigantic squad you've built for your opponent, you've essentially handed them the implement of your own doom. So this is more of a possibly like build around it. Obviously, if you're playing nutty craziness like Elish Norn, for example. Oh, look, all my creatures have +2/+2. All your creatures have -2/-2. Interestingly enough, that means all my samurais are 4/4s, and all yours are 0/0s, otherwise known as non-existent. You know what I mean? Like, if you build around it, you can take away the sort of symmetrical. I mean, yes, it is asymmetrical to a degree because you're getting 1 more samurai and they have more abilities, but there is a lot of symmetry to this card. If you can fully break the symmetry, then this card goes from, is this all right, into absolute bonkers territory. This does generate a ton of creatures for your opponent, but at the same time, they only have the capability to block half as much as you think they would. So in the example that I gave, if you made 10 tokens, your opponent would get 9 tokens. You swing in with 10 tokens, he can actually only block 4 of your tokens, right? So you're going to lose 4 tokens, your opponent's going to lose 4 tokens. He's going to get hit by 6 of those guys and take 12. But then you're all tapped out and your opponent has a squad of the rest of their tokens that they can swing back on you with, right? So it does feel like it's a dangerous level of power. You know what they say, kids? Stay away from Eganjo. It's not good for you. Not even Eganjo. Not even once. Okay, so that wraps up the spoilers we have to talk about today. I hope you found it interesting. Share the video around if you enjoyed it. Big thank you to all of my patrons, and I will see you, my friends, in the next video.